All right, the time is 10:30ish. We're going to call this meeting to order. Oh, this is an issue. All right. Is Pat around? Hey, Pat. Hey, Pat. I think we need a battery for this. We'll go manual until then. All right, so in order to have a meeting, we need the town warrant, which has been served to me. We need quorum, which is 15 people. We have that. We have our town clerk and myself, the town moderator, Keith Menard. That's those. That's these. All right, is there... This wind is going to be an issue. All right, there you go. Yeah, this is gonna be fun. I mean, like, really, the only thing I like is that I'm having a good hair day, so. So over on the left, we have non-voters. They could be representatives from the school, representatives from the town. Also, over here, we have our town accountant, other employees of the town, and we also have people in the crowd who may have a vested interest in the business before us today. Is there any dissent to allowing them to speak? Okay, seeing none, they will be allowed to speak at the meeting. We have our Finance Committee, if they could please stand up real quick. Thank you very much to the Finance Committee. They're the ones who help prepare the town bulletin as well as our budget. They work very diligently throughout the year in order to make that happen, make recommendations.
Turn it up. Can't hear nothing out here.
Can't hear anything over there. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. You go.
That's a little better? All right. I will, I'll be sure to make sure that I'm speaking into the mic. That's better like that? Excellent. We do have openings on the Finance Committee. If anyone is interested in serving, we would love to have you. Please come see me after the meeting, or if you're watching this on TV, please contact Town Hall and they will get you in touch with me. That's her. We'll work. So, helping to make town meeting possible today, we have our checkers, Lisa Postma and Don Postma, as well as our counters, Andrea Cortez, Lee Blaniaz, and Don Postma. Our constables, Carol Field and Ben Tassino. I will be your mic runner for the day. And I'll explain a little bit more about how we're going to do that in a minute. But before we continue, I would like to thank all the town and school employees who set all of this up. They've been working for weeks in order to help us do this. And I also want to give a special thanks to Emergency Productions, who brought our wireless mic, as well as these two monitors. So big thank you to our own town company, Emergency Productions. They did donate this. So a little bit about how town meeting will be run. Motions are made and seconded. Afterwards, there'll be a proponent speech, followed by a question and answer session. Please wait for the mic to arrive. Once I bring the mic to you, state your name and street address, and and direct all questions through the moderator. After questions, we'll move on to debate. Again, all debate through the moderator. After debate is exhausted or the question is called, which does need a 2/3 vote to pass, as well as a second, we'll close discussion and move on to voting. Votes can be taken by various ways, including unanimous consent, where I would just say, is there any dissent to passing this article? If there is none, the article will be considered passed unanimously. Voice vote, which is your typical yeas and nays, and a counted vote in some cases where we feel the need to put down a recorded number, and that's where I would ask people to stand and sit for the vote to be counted. Another thing that we're doing, we started this last year and I think is going to be especially advantageous for this meeting, is motions from the floor. If the motion is the same as what's printed in the warrant, I may say I'll accept the motion from the floor to move the article as printed in the warrant, and if there's a second, then the motion is considered before us at that point. And then also at times I will ask at that point if there's any dissent to passing the article, and we'll dispense of the article quickly. We are going to be expanding the motions from the floor a little bit in order to decrease the amount of movement within the meeting. So if there are questions, then we will move that. I will ask the person who is supposed to be presenting to come up and answer those questions using this microphone. During debate is the proper time to offer amendments. Amendments must be submitted in writing, and they must be deemed within the scope of the warrant and what I would feel is the townspeople have been warned about. So as I always say, please keep in mind while what we're doing has serious, both short-term and long-term impacts on the community. We're all neighbors, so please treat each other respectfully. As well as the process. The town meeting process is a great one that has a long history, and in my mind is one of the most purest forms of democracy that we have available to us. Is there any dissent to dispensing of the reading of the warrant? Okay, seeing none, we will dispense of reading of the warrant. I do have the signed warrant in front of me, signed by Kevin Morris, David Cortez, Tim Bonin, and Harold Davis, and attested to by our Constable Carol Field on 8/25/2020. So we do have a flag over there, as well as a flag on the screen. If you could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance.
Of the United States of America, to the republic, one nation, under God,
And I will take this time to remind everyone to mute their phones, please. Myself included. The Finance Committee come and present Articles 1, 2, and 3, please.
Good morning. Good morning. Can everyone hear me?
no.
All right. How about now? All right. Okay. So good morning. My name is Howard D'Amico. I'm chairman of the Finance Committee. And what I'm going to present this morning is the motion to approve the town's budget, the entire budget. The only piece that is not in this article is the piece on the Blackstone Valley Tech appropriation, and that's a separate article that we'll address after this article. So I move that the town vote to hear and act upon the report and recommendations of the Finance Committee, and further to fix the salary and compensation of elected officials as presented in the Finance Committee's fiscal year 21 budget recommendation. And further to approve a town budget of $28,985,698, consisting of $15,629 transferred from reserved for reduction of excluded debt account, $340,000 transferred from ambulance receipts reserved for appropriation, $20,000 transferred from wetlands protection funds, and the remaining $28,610,069 to be raised and appropriated. All is set forth in the column entitled Fiscal Year 21 Finance Committee, Board of Selectmen, Town Administrator Recommended Budget, in a handout entitled Finance Committee Budget Message for Fiscal Year 2021, for the purpose of funding the annual operating budget of the town for the fiscal year 2021. And the Finance Committee does unanimously recommend that you approve this article.
Motion been made. Is there a second? Okay, motion been made and seconded. So the way that we do this is Howard will read through the summary expenditures, and if there is a question or debate or an amendment that you would like to offer on something within one of those summaries, then you would yell hold. If there's a hold, we'll go back to that and we'll do question and answer as well as debate and the opportunity for amendments on each of those subjects, but the rest will be considered dispensed of at that point. Okay, and it's that summary is on page 9 of the voter bulletin. Any questions on how that happens? Okay, seeing none. Howard?
Okay, again, good morning. So again, as Keith referenced, looking at page 9 and the summary of expenditures, section 1, total general government, $1,634,388. Total public safety, $2,931,443. Total public works, $926,342. Total health and human services, $272,392. Total culture and recreation, $257,168. Total education, $15,679,664. Total insurance employee benefits, $4,714,716. Total debt service, $2,519,585. Total capital outlay will be addressed in the capital article. Total special article 0. Total transfers, $50,000.
Okay, there's a hold on total public safety. Are there any questions on total public safety? Okay, seeing none. Would anyone like to speak on total public safety? Mr. Boner?
Good morning, everyone. Board of Selectmen, proud member, and a resident of 9 Linden Street. I've served on this board for a number of years. I've taken great pride in debating important matters before the town. Testing, is that better? All right, that feels better too. I'll start over. Jim Bonin, member of the Douglas Board of Selectmen, resident 9 Linden Street. Contained in this budget is an assistant fire chief position to the tune of $90,000. It was a item that was brought up in the 11th hour of our budget deliberations as a board. We did debate it slightly, but ultimately it is contained in the budget that you have there today. So my amendment at the appropriate time, really in a moment of clarity and a moment of transparency, asks you, the townspeople, the town taxpayers, the residents, 2 questions. 1, does this town need an assistant fire chief? And 2, can this town afford an assistant fire chief at this time? Thank you.
Do you want to offer your amendment now? Any other discussion on this article before we consider amendments? I'll go ahead and bring the mic to you. Now, please keep in mind we are currently discussing the budget that is in front of us. There are no amendments offered at this time. So it is the budget that we currently have.
Ellie Chesbrough, 17 Church Street. I'm curious if it's assistant fire chief or deputy fire chief. I noticed that there is a deputy fire chief in somewhere, and there's an assistant fire chief, and I'm confused of which is which and what either one does.
So this is a little bit of kind of putting the cart before the horse, which is just kind of an unfortunate way that the warrant is set up, and that is we actually haven't discussed the actual position. Right now we're just discussing the money for a position. That said, it's very obvious what it is, so I will go ahead and entertain that question. But you know, it does get a little mucky. Anybody want to field that question? Chief? Okay.
The deputy fire chief position is a call position. It's currently held by the highway superintendent, so it's a call position. Right now, there's also an assistant chief position that is currently unfilled. That's a call position. This would be a new position. It would be a person that would have to be a paramedic, and they'd be highly qualified. Skill levels like hazmat technician, things of that nature. Again, the fire department is becoming more and more complex with the type of calls that we're receiving and the frequency of calls. I would also say that this came to light during the COVID response. Myself and the deputy chief were both taken out by COVID early on, left us with no direction over the fire department other than a company officer who was also covering as the highway superintendent when both of us were out. So it showed us a weakness that we needed to improve, and also the other reason for this is to have another paramedic on during the day that could help us get our second ambulance out. Right now, last year we had 67 ambulance calls during the day that we were not able to cover with our second ambulance that we have sitting in the station. If we're able to do that, if we were able to fund this position, myself and the assistant chief would be able to cover that. It would also help me with the daily operations of the fire department. Things like overseeing the full-time operations in my absence, like happened during COVID. Overseeing daily operations with the full-time staff. Attending night meetings with myself or absence and not in my place. Able to answer second ambulance calls, or when somebody calls out for a shift, we only have 7 full-time people right now. When COVID hit, 5 of us out of the 8 full-time people were out of service for 2 weeks. So this was we see a possible surge coming up in the growth of the calls that we're receiving. So we want to be able to answer those second calls and make sure that we're able to get an ambulance to you quickly during the day when there are no call people, no call firefighters in town. They would also oversee and assist the Department of Life with the life safety inspection program, carbon monoxide detector, and smoke inspections when someone sells a home. Businesses, we do business inspections to make sure that the businesses we're going into are safe. New construction, there's a lot of new construction going on, all those inspections. Pre-planning high target hazard buildings. Making sure that our vulnerable populations are protected and we pre-plan for that. Also, it would be assisting in disciplinary issues. Oversee and assist quality assurance and quality insurance of ambulance calls. Each ambulance report, after it's been written, has to be gone over with a fine-tooth comb to make sure protocols and things like that are being done. These are all things that are falling on myself and the full-time staff of the day as they answer calls. Would also assist in giving us more time to spend looking for more funding and granting opportunities that exist and giving us time to do that. Assist in strategic planning and implementation of economic development. We got a possible 1 million square foot building coming in town that has to be pre-planned. We have to figure out how we're going to do that successfully to make sure that we have the correct fire protection and the life safety inspections. Assurance of all compliance with National Fire Protection Association guidelines for fire departments, and also making sure that we're meeting OSHA. This became an OSHA state 2 years ago. And that really puts us, opens us up to liability. We want to make sure that we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's. Also assuring that the apparatus inspection program is meeting the ISO needs so that we're able to keep your insurances, your house insurances down. So really what this is we're, right now, COVID brought this about, and then we had a bad crash in early July with a gasoline tanker with 10,000 gallons of fuel with a car on fire that hit it head on. The only people that were able to respond immediately were myself and the deputy chief. The deputy chief pulled the victim out of the car. I drove the fire engine to the scene and had to pump the engine. In the fire emergency services and fire services, and the other thing I wanted to mention was our ambulance was already out and was already in Milford. So we had to get another mutual aid call and call for Lifeline for that patient. But these are things that are increasing on a more and more consistent basis. Just Monday, I was already in the station. I was fueling up at the pumps. My cruiser, another call came in. Our ambulance was in Milford. So I had to go to that call. We immediately called mutual aid. There were no ambulances available. I went to that call and our ambulance responded from Milford to take that patient, which was a critical patient that I had to hop on and assist with in transporting to St. Vincent's Hospital. So these are things that are happening on a more and more consistent basis. When we came to you folks a few years ago to go 24/7, the problem was we weren't getting our ambulance out in 4 to 6 minutes. That's called the Eisenberg model. Making sure that we're able to get to you. If you're sick, 4 to 6 minutes or having a heart attack or something like that, we want to be able to get to you. Well, I was with that patient for 10 minutes before that ambulance ever arrived. And that call came in 5 or 6 minutes before that. So that's 15 minutes a person's on the ground in shock, waiting for emergency services. So these are some of the gaps that we're trying to cover. In 2019, we had 67 ambulance calls that we had to call mutual aid for. In 2018, let's see if I can get this right. I'm sorry. 2018 was 49 ambulance calls that we had to call mutual aid for. We went mutual aid 77 times to other towns, helping them when they needed help. So there's 110 times that we were either in another town somewhere else, or we were asking for help because we needed it from them. That was 2017. In 2016, there were 37 ambulance calls where we were not able to utilize our ambulance to do that. We have 2 ambulances that are very new. We want to be able to utilize them and get the citizens in our community an ambulance as quick as possible. When we started and had full-timers put on back in 2000, I was one of the first full-time firefighters that were hired for the town of Douglas. The reason was during 7 to 5, with no call people in town, we weren't able to get that ambulance out. So this is a high priority, in my opinion, to make sure that you folks are safe and with the example of the tanker crash, it was an unsafe situation for all people involved. In the fire service, we try to be proactive, not reactive. Right now, we're in a reactive mode, and that's not really a very good place to be. So I would ask that you support this. This funding for an assistant chief. It is something this town drastically needs.
Ellie, was your question answered? Okay. Anyone else like to speak on this article? Or on this portion of the article?
Once again, I believe you deserve the right to vote this up or down. So, Mr. Moderator, I move to amend Article 2 by reducing the total approved budget, $90,000. $45,000 from fire wages and $45,000 from ambulance wages, for a new total of $28,895,698, consisting of $15,629 transferred from the reserve for reduction for excluded debt account, $320,000 transferred from the ambulance receipts reserved account, $20,000 from the Wetlands Protection Fund, and the remaining $28,540,069 to be raised and appropriated as set forth in the column entitled Fiscal Year 21, Finance Committee, Board of Selectmen, Town Administrator Recommended Budget, in the handout entitled Finance Committee Budget Message for Fiscal Year 2021, for the purpose of funding the annual operating budget of the town for the fiscal year 2021.
Motion's been made. Is there a second? There's a second. You have the floor.
It's up to you. This is your town. $90,000 plus. As Keith said, it is truly a wonderful democracy. And I want to know what you guys think.
Any questions for Mr. Bonin on this amendment? Okay, seeing none, would anyone like to speak on the amendment?
Kevin Morse, Chairman, Board of Selectmen, 17 Churchill Road in Douglas. I just wanted to speak out saying that I fully support the addition of the position of assistant fire chief. I have a strong understanding and need for public safety within the town of Douglas. My voting record has pretty much accompanied that. A few years back, we had actually issued the fire department to have a strong chief. The purpose behind us doing that is for him to be able to run his department as a subject matter expert and as an expert in the field and a master of his craft. I think that the fire chief would know best as to what his department would need in order to provide safety and good quality service from both fire services and the ambulance to the town of Douglas. So I would ask that we support the fire chief in his ask and leave our budget as originally proposed and agreed upon by both the Finance Committee unanimously and the Board of Selectmen unanimously. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak on the amendment?
Mark Blatchford, 44 Pond Street, Douglas. I'd like to speak in favor of the chief in the fire department. I know from just experience living here my whole life that the fire department's always done a great job. I've seen brush fires, house fires where we've had to call in other towns to help us. My uncle, he's a deputy chief in Somers, Connecticut, and I see the experience that he has and how they're an underfunded department and how it's stressful for people who are part-time and on-call administrators to do their full-time job and do their job at the fire department too. Deputy Chief Erno does an amazing job, but he's also the superintendent of the highway department. We need more full-time administrators at the fire department to do their full job to protect us. Yes, we are a smaller town in the area, but we are still growing. We have buildings coming. Like the chief said, there's possible 1 million square foot building from the town. We need full-time people to make sure that goes correctly, up to code, make sure now, since we're an OSHA state and that's just more red tape, but so we can get up to OSHA standards so our town isn't liable for anything that happens and we are dotting our I's, crossing our T's. Being a firefighter, very stressful job. My heart goes out to anyone who does it. I don't know if I could, but they need our support, they need our funding, they need more full-time people to do their job to protect us.
Would anyone else like to speak on this article? Or, I'm sorry, on this amendment?
Again, good morning.
Just hold it a little further.
Good morning, Howard D'Amico, 55 Old Farm Road. And I'll do this two ways. First, as chairman of the Finance Committee. So the Finance Committee did debate this issue pretty significantly in our meetings. We did have the chief in front of us. Frankly, we peppered him with questions on both sides of the issue for quite some time. I think and we did wind up with a recommendation to approve his request, and that is why it's in the article with that amount in for a request for approval of the overall budget. I think the two things that impressed us the most were, one, the idea that you have to keep in mind this is not a pure $90,000 drawdown on the budget. As the chief just referenced, you also have the other calls that you're not being able to take right now. You have the ambulance, you have the underlying structure for, but you're not getting that revenue because you don't have an other person that can go out onto those calls. And then of course the other part is the more practical part, and that's the part that the 4 to 6 minutes. And those 4 to 6 minutes, that response time is really critical for all of us. One of the things I think about on finance, if I may, is the highway department comes in front of us every year and they make the point, hey, we're the only department you use every day. And my view of that is, I use the fire department every day. I use the police department every day. When I go to bed at night, when I tuck my kids in at night, I do it under the cloak of that safety. And the idea that they're there in 4 to 6 minutes to come get us, I think is critically important. I think this is a good expenditure. I would vote or recommend that we approve it. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak on the amendment?
Hi, I'm Christina Menard, 15 Year Church Street. One of the questions I have, and I don't know if the chief can answer it, is in regards to those 67 call-outs. I'm curious, if those are reduced, does that reduce the amount of money on expenses? And if we are now able to assist other towns, does that increase revenue for us? I'm just curious how that goes for other towns, if it's a chargeable expense to our budget. So I'm just curious about that.
The way that works is if we respond to another town to assist them, we get the revenue for that call, we bill the insurance company of that patient, and vice versa. So if we have to call for help and the other town comes in to help us, they get the revenue for that call, we don't. And so it really would help offset, but it's not gonna completely cancel out, you know, you understand what I'm saying? So it wouldn't be a full 90,000, you would be able to recoup some of that in the ambulance costs that you would cover. But the other point is that I wanted to mention was, you know, one hand scratches the other person's back. If we help them, they help us. There might be years where we're in another town helping them more, and there might be years where they're helping us. And it has to do with, you know, how many ambulance calls, how busy is a town, and how many ambulances do they have available. And when you don't have an ambulance available, you have to call somebody to come treat that patient.
Cheryl Chamberlain, 106 West Street. I have more of a comment in the fact that we're asking for additional funding for this assistant chief, but I have to ask everyone here to think about, what if it was your family member or yourself that needed that second ambulance? And we have an ambulance either helping somebody already in town or assisting another town, and there's just no one there to help you. And those 5, 6, 7, 10 minutes can last for a long time. I have had somebody in my household that required assistance, and the ambulance was there very quickly, thankfully, and I like to know that they are there when we need them. It's kind of like insurance. You pay for things you don't really want to pay for, but you're very thankful when it's there. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Is it on? Okay. Lynn Roszak, 50 Conservation Drive, Douglas. It's probably my conservative generation speaking here, but would some math whiz or all of the math whizzes on the Finance Committee be able to tell us approximately what this would cost each taxpayer a year? Because I don't think it would be more than $20.
The reason I'm laughing is because our town accountant, I literally turned around and she was already shaking her head no. So I think we're how many town residents do we have now? 8,700. Okay, so we'll let you kind of do the math in your head on that one. Anyone else like to speak?
Ellie Chesbro, 17 Church Street. It's a question, how many other towns with 8,700 people in central Massachusetts have the same deputy fire chief position?
Every Massachusetts town that abuts us has at least a deputy chief. This isn't even at the level of a deputy chief, but it's actually a rank lower than that. Uxbridge has a deputy. Northbridge has two district chiefs. Webster has a deputy. Sutton has a deputy.
Ellie Chesbro again. The only town that seemed more to our size was Sutton. All the other ones are at least double or triple our size.
They are not even double in population-wise, none of them. And as far as square mileage, we're bigger than all the abutters. We have 37 square miles, which takes us longer to get to people based on location and distance to travel.
Anyone else like to speak on the amendment?
Shirley Mazinski, 60 Oak Street. I do have a concern and a sort of a concern for the chief. Chief, last year, I believe it was, we bought a second ambulance, so we now have 2 ambulances, correct?
We've had 2 ambulances for about 18 years.
Yeah, but I mean,
So our ambulances are,
both fairly new.
they're both less than about a year, one's a year old, one's a year and a half.
Right. So what you're saying, as I understand it, that there's times when you don't have enough personnel to use that second ambulance.
We always need the second ambulance.
Yeah.
But right, that one more person with myself, we were able to get that second ambulance.
Thank you.
Was everyone able to hear the answer on that one? Yes. Okay.
Can everyone hear me? Ryan Hogan, 10 Darling Way. As we know, we get a lot of our revenue from the state. I think it's somewhere between 40 and 50%. With the COVID pandemic, I assume state revenues are going to be down significantly. Just wanted to ask how much consideration was given that we would be adding position this year, and then get limited state funding next year, and then be in a position where we have to cut staff. Thank you.
Matt, I'm going to go ahead and recognize you on that one.
I can either squat or I can stand. I'd rather stand. Mr. Moderator. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to respond. Mr. Hogan, thank you for the question. As a former FinCom chair, you know what we deal with revenue. This year, we planned the budget for a significant decrease in state revenue as a result of the economic downturn arising from the pandemic. And the state authorities came back and said they were not going to reduce local aid in fiscal 21. Nevertheless, we identified a significant number of cuts across the entire budget that would take into account a very large revenue shortfall. Those savings initiatives, some of them are going to be implemented anyway. Some of them are still available for use in fiscal 22 if we have that same shock. My personal thought is I thought the state would have hurt us this year because they needed to balance their budget this year, fiscal 21, and they did not. It would seem to indicate that in fiscal 22, the legislature will once again try to keep its commitment to the schools and municipalities across the Commonwealth and not touch either Chapter 70 or general revenue sharing from the state. If we find ourselves in that position, though, we would cut other things first. We're not going to bring somebody on in this level of responsibility only to turn them loose a year later. We will find a way to reduce the budget to sustain the public safety quotient that we've identified as necessary.
Would anyone else like to speak on the amendment? Okay, there's been a motion to close discussion on the amendment. Is there a second? All those in favor of closing discussion on the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying no. The ayes have it. We'll now vote on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment before us, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying no. Okay, cannot call that one. All right, counters. So just to clarify what we are voting on right now, it is the amendment that Mr. Bonin made in order to reduce the safety budget by $90,000. So a yes vote will make that amendment part of the main motion, which we would be going back to after this vote. Any questions? A yes vote will reduce the budget by $90,000. It has nothing to do with the position itself, which comes up later. However, it would remove the funding for that position. Clear as mud? Okay. If you want to fund that position, then you would vote no on this amendment. Yes, it is tricky, I understand that. Any questions before we move to a vote? Okay. All those in favor of the amendment, please stand. You may be seated. All those opposed to the amendment, please stand. You may be seated. The amendment fails by a vote of 18 to 58. So this is where not having a pointer, unfortunately, is coming back to bite me a little bit here. So we're moving back to the original motion as made by the Finance Committee and Mr. D'Amico, which does include the $90,000 that we spoke about before. Is there any other questions or debate on the total public safety portion of this budget? Okay, seeing none, I do have to give my Gene disclaimer, which is while we have been discussing each expenditure's summary, what we're actually passing is the entire budget that is listed in the voter bulletin. Is that good, Gene? Okay. All those in favor of Articles 1, 2, and 3, please signify by saying aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying no. Articles 1, 2, and 3 are considered to be passed unanimously. Okay, I will accept the motion from the floor to move Article 4 as printed in the warrant. Motion's been made. Is there a second? Second. Motion's been made and seconded. Are there any questions on Article 4? Okay, Mr. D'Amico. Yes.
So again, good morning. So I think we're going to do again to you what we just did. And that's here, while the Finance Committee is moving the motion to approve the Blackstone Valley budget, the Finance Committee in a 5-1 vote voted to recommend that you not approve that. So it's the Finance Committee's recommendation that the town does not approve the Blackstone Valley budget increase request of a 3.9% year-over-year budget increase for their budget when the Douglas School Committee and school budget increased by 1.5% this year. So it's a Finance Committee, if you will, reverse recommendation that you do not approve the motion. I would encourage you to vote no.
Questions on Article 4? Please remember, these are questions only. We're not moving to debate yet.
Dave Bertman, 30 Cobblestone Lane. Can anybody tell us what the ramifications of voting no on this are?
So I think I've got this. So there are 13 towns that participate in the Blackstone Valley Regional Technical School District in its budget. And in order to have the Blackstone Valley budget request that comes to all 13 towns approved, so that all 13 towns are then later obligated to pay their portion of that budget request, 9 towns have to vote to approve it. And I will tell you candidly, I believe we are the last of the 13 towns for this fiscal year to hold our annual town meeting. And I will also tell you that I believe the other 12 towns have already voted to approve the budget request. It is Finance Committee's position that the only way to start getting traction to get a little more parity or accountability from the Blackstone Valley budget each year to have it more closely match our budget increase or decrease for our school district is to have our town vote, even if we're the lead town, to say we would rather have something more in line with our own school system. So by voting no today, it would leave Douglas as the 13th town, and the final would be 12-1. What would then happen, from Finance Committee's perspective, is at least you would have sent a message to the other towns that would be aware of that next year there's at least one town willing to try to get to the 5 towns. And you're not looking to say Blackstone Valley's not doing a good job. You're not looking to not appropriate money for them. You're just looking to get a system in place so that the towns have a little more community recognition of a more matching budget to their town budgets. So in asking you to vote no, I concede that I think it would be later, probably at the special town meeting, when the final official tally had been taken, and lo and behold, it was 12-1, that we would then be told, well, it was 12-1, it wasn't 9-4 or 8-5, and so you now have to approve that amount. But we're looking for a negative vote. Douglas would be the town that says, when you made a budget request of 3.9% before COVID, when you did not reduce that request during COVID while everything else needed to cut, and we went to 1.5%, that we're asking for a little more fiscal responsibility back. So that's the reverse, that's the negative recommendation, and that's the effect of that vote.
Okay, and it was confirmed by Dr. Fitzpatrick before the meeting that 12 other towns have voted affirmative in the budget. Did you still want to? Okay, hold on. Is this your paperwork?
Jean Lovett, Finance Director, Town Accountant. I appreciate the finance committee's message, and I understand their position in trying to support the equity between the public schools and the BVT. However, this year is a little different. We have already requested deficit spending from the state for July, August, and September because we did not hold our annual town meeting in May as the other communities may have had, or most of them. Because of that, we've already made our first payment to BVT. It was due in August. It was part of our deficit spending request, and that has been made. So by not approving this budget, we will now have an account that has no funding. That is not a good position to be in. Should anything surge and we cannot hold the fall town meeting, that would put us in a bad position trying to set the tax fee cap. So while I understand the Finance Committee's message, I am requesting that the funding for BVT happen just so I don't have a deficit spending account.
Okay, there was a question from the floor while I was out there asking if the Blackstone Valley Vocational School District rep, which we pay $500 a year for, is in attendance. He's ill. Okay. Other questions on Article 4? Okay, seeing none. Would anyone like to speak on Article 4?
Shirley Mazinski, 60 Oak Street. I believe we have gone this route before. Actually have probably had 2 or 3 other communities with us, and we end up coming back in the fall or at a special town meeting and approving the funds. So I support Jean's position.
Anyone else like to speak on Article 4? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of Article 4, please signify by saying aye. All those opposed to Article 4, please signify by saying no. Oh, you guys are killing me. All right. All those in favor of Article 4, please stand. You may be seated. All those opposed to Article 4, please stand. You may be seated. Article 4 fails by a vote of 24 to 40. Sorry, Gene. What's that? Oh, now we gotta have a fall town meeting. You guys really out to get me today. Okay, I will take a motion from the floor to move Articles 5, 7, and 8 as printed, and Article 6, and Gene, pay close attention here, as followed, that the town vote to raise and appropriate and or transfer the sum of $225,300 from nope, I apologize. Article 6 as follows, that the town vote to raise and appropriate and or transfer the sum of $1,023,743 from water and sewer charges and fees, transfer the sum of $106,602 from reserve for debt account, transfer the sum of $246,040 from retained earnings, transfer from sewer system development the sum of $60,000, and water system development the sum of $40,736 for a total budget of $1,477,121 to operate and maintain the water sewer department.
Good.
Is there a second?
Hope everybody's healthy.
There's
You too.
a motion and a second. Are there any questions on Articles 5, 6, 7, and 8? Okay, seeing none, would anyone like to speak on the articles? Also seeing none, is there any dissent to passing Articles 5, 6, 7, and 8 unanimously? Seeing none, the articles pass unanimously. Article 9, moderator recognizes Mr. Morse.
vote to approve the personnel classification and compensation plans for fiscal year 2021 as written in the warrant.
Motion been made and seconded. You have the floor.
The motion is to approve the personnel classification plan, which includes one change. The Board of Selectmen and Finance Committee approved a budget that includes a new position of an assistant fire chief to be paid on the non-union compensation table. The compensation plan also includes a 1.75% cost of living adjustment for non-union employees, the same as last year.
Motion's been made, seconded, yeah, all right, all that stuff. Okay, good. Any questions on the article? Seeing none, anyone like to speak on the article? Also seeing none, is there any dissent to passing this article unanimously? Seeing none, Article 9 passes unanimously. I will now accept an article from the floor, a motion from the floor to, jeez, I apologize here. Would anyone like to move Article 10 as printed in the warrant? Motion's been made. Is there a second? Okay, motion made and seconded. Are there any questions on Article 10? Anyone like to speak on Article 10? Seeing none, is there any dissent to passing Article 10 unanimously? Seeing none, Article 10 passes unanimously. Now take a motion from the floor for Article 11 as printed in the warrant. Motion been made. Is there a second? Motion been made and seconded. Are there any questions on Article 11? Seeing none, would anyone like to speak on Article 11? Also seeing none, is there any dissent to passing Article 11 unanimously? Seeing none, Article 11 passes unanimously. Okay, Article 12. Mr. Davis. You guys hear that rooster? I hear that rooster.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Hal Davis, 80 Orange Street. I move that the town vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to transfer the real property shown as Lot 1, approximately 9.2 acres, on the Town of Douglas Tax Assessors Map 139 in its entirety, an approximately 8.5 acre portion of the real property shown as Lot 44 on Tax Assessors Map 138, for purposes of economic development, that the Chief Procurement Officer be required to put these assets out for public bidding in accordance with the procedures specified in Mass General Law, Chapter 30B, Section 16, for the disposal of an interest in real property.
Motion's been made and seconded. You have the floor.
Thank you. If approved, this motion would allow the Board of Selectmen to dispose of the described land parcels per the competitive bidding process required by state law. These pieces of land are located in between Gilboa Street on the northern side and Northeast Main Street to the south. Various developers have taken note of the available land across along either side of Route 146 south of Worcester. In addition to the existing BJ's Wells Wholesale Warehouse and recently completed Medline facility in Uxbridge, there is an interest in at least 3 building sites, including one in Douglas, at the site of the former McIntyre Sand and Gravel Pit in nearby lots owned by the Town of Douglas. The 2 lots are owned by the town and have been designated as excess by the Board of Selectmen. Combining these 2 lots with the former pit will allow any site developer to manage truck traffic toward 146 ramps on Lackey Dam Road. The motion takes note of the process the procurement officer, who is the town administrator, must follow to enable the Board of Selectmen to seek proposals and sell the property under Massachusetts General Law 30B. I'd like to say I'd like to have a nickel for any time that somebody has mentioned to me that we need more business in town. Thanks to the efforts of the Economic Development Commission, Bob Manarick in particular, we're very close to realizing the possibility of having a 1 million square foot distribution facility set up in the town of Douglas. This would the approximate tax take from commercial taxes and industrial taxes in the town represents 6%, which is about the lowest in any surrounding community. If a 1 million square foot facility is in fact constructed at this site, it would likely double the tax take to the town from 6% to 12% from business, commercial, and industrial purposes. I think there's a slide, Keith, that you have showing the development taking place in surrounding communities and then hopefully also in Douglas. Is that okay? You can take a look at that. So we're hoping to join the other communities in realizing tax growth to our community. This facility, as discussed with the Board of Selectmen, would also create about 300 to 400 jobs. And the town would endeavor to make sure that priority would be given to Douglas residents. So this is a win-win, increased tax base, lowering the burden on the homeowner, at the same time creating additional jobs. I think the second slide, that is this slide shows you, yeah, where the facility would be located and how the town land fits into that. And then the third slide shows, in fact, what the building would look like situated on the parcels. So I urge that we adopt and pass this article and start Douglas on the road to realizing some new commercial tax base for the town.
Questions? Hey, hold on 1 second.
Robert Brazo, 130 Main Street, Douglas, of course. Chairman of the Board of Health also. Hal, my question to you is this, I really can't see the map very well, but does this abut Route 146? Is it direct? It does.
Yes, that's the attraction of this location, is to provide ready access to 146.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Blackie did, yeah. Okay, there's a lot of wetland there, isn't there? Okay, yes. So what is the exact the plot of land that they're talking about? On the...
It's the McIntyre property plus eventually,
yes.
plus it would, yes, if you know,
Okay,
you know where the sand and gravel location is, that's what we're talking about.
Okay.
And this project has to go through all the permitting requirements of the town, conservation, when you mentioned wetlands.
Other questions? Okay, seeing none, would anyone like to speak on the article? Okay, also seeing none, is there any dissent to passing this article unanimously? All right, seeing none, Article 12 passes unanimously. Okay, I will take a motion from the floor for Article 13. Motion, or Article 13 as printed in the warrant has been moved. Is there a second? And seconded. Is there any dissent to, well, we'll start with any questions on Article 13? Seeing none, anyone like to speak on Article 13? To my left? Okay.
Bill Cundiff, Town Engineer. My question is, I believe we were going to defer this to the fall town meeting, so I look for someone to pass over this article at this time, so that we can have an actual appraisal done.
I will accept an amendment to pass over this article. Motion's been made. Is there a second? Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any dissent to passing that amendment? Okay, seeing none. The amendment passes unanimously. The motion on the floor right now is to pass over Article 13. Is there any dissent to passing over Article 13? Seeing none, we'll pass over Article 13. Article 14, Mr. Marks.
Can you hear me? This moderator, I move that the town vote to amend the Town of Douglas zoning bylaw with regard to ground-mounted solar photovoltaic installations as written in the warrant.
Motion been made. Is there a second? Motion been made and seconded. You have the floor. I also am in receipt of the planning board's. I do.
Due to the increasing need for alternative energy, such as solar arrays, planning board wanted to define the difference between a residential small solar array for home use versus a commercial large solar array in the town. The planning board wanted to have the ability to issue a special permit for larger than 30 kilowatts and require a site plan review for those larger commercial solar operations.
Any questions on this article? Okay, seeing none, would anyone like to speak on the article? Seeing none, is there any dissent to passing Article 14 unanimously? Seeing none, Article 14 passes unanimously. Article 15, Mr. Marks, you have the floor.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to amend the zoning bylaw and zoning map for the town of Douglas, Massachusetts in reference to the new Geographic Information System, GIS, zoning map as written in the warrant.
Motion been made. Is there a second? Motion made and seconded. You have the floor. And I am in receipt of the planning board's memorandum. Yes. Thank you.
These changes will simply update the town zoning map by incorporating changes that have already passed at recent town meetings.
Any questions on Article 15? Seeing none, would anyone like to speak on Article 15? Seeing none, is there any dissent to passing Article 15 unanimously? Seeing none, Article 15 passes unanimously. Mr. Marks, long walk.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to amend the use table in these town of zoning bylaws by adding the new industrial use as written in the warrant.
Motion been made. Is there a second? Motion made and seconded. Again, you have the floor, and I am in receipt of the planning board's memo in regards to this article.
Thank you. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment revises the use table to allow any manufacturing use, including processing, fabrication, and assembly conducted outside of a building within industrial zoned areas by special permit through planning board. It is anticipated that this modification will allow more business opportunities within the town.
Any questions on this article? Okay. Seeing none, would anyone like to speak on the article? Also seeing none, is there any dissent to passing Article 16 unanimously? Seeing none, Article 16 passes unanimously. Thank you. That's it. Now you're done.
Thank you.
Mr. Cortez, Article 17. My mics have never been this clean.
I move that the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $12,500 for the purpose of surveying and installing highway bounds throughout the Preservation Park subdivision.
Motion been made. Is there a second? Motion made and seconded. Sorry, we have a flyover that I scheduled, but I got the time a little bit wrong. Go ahead.
This subdivision was completed without proper highway boundary markers. There's insufficient surety in place to pay for them. These markers are necessary as they serve as survey reference points when property owners attempt to have plot plans created for their lots, including in support of the sale of their property. The Planning Board seeks to address this issue with this subdivision and several others over the course of the next several years.
Any questions? That's like, when you're at an auction and suddenly you're, going home with
Lynn Rosak, Conservation Drive, number 50. We had a flood in our home 15 months ago due to a toilet, and every room in the house was destroyed. So, to that point, we have not lived there for 14 of those 15 months, and I am completely at a loss as to, what's going on there. Seeing Preservation Park abuts our land, I would just, appreciate if somebody could fill me in on what's going on since I've been gone. Thank you.
Bill Cundiff, town engineer. Lynn, the work that you see going on out there now is not related to this article. I've gotten a few phone calls regarding the activity that's going on out there. They're looking at, from what I understand, that there's a developer looking at developing 110 acres, and that's unrelated to what this article is about. This article is only about installing monuments, bounds, those concrete monuments along the edge of the road at various locations. The goal is to define the right of way where the road is, and the side effect of that is to help people survey, know where their property boundaries are.
Other questions?
Good catch.
Things get slippery, man.
Shirley Mazinski, 60 Oak Street. So I believe this article came up before on another development, I believe at the last year's annual town meeting or thereabouts. So my question is, on the new developments, is this a requirement of the developer? Because the town is paying for what the developer, in my opinion, should have done.
Thank you.
You are correct. These subdivisions are over 20 years old and they've been developed prior to the planning board having a good procedure in place. So we're trying to catch up basically. You might recall recently we had a number of these accepted as public ways. We've used what little surety we've had remaining to finish up the roadways. This is something that the planning board feels is essential as a next step. So we didn't have adequate funds to do that. We put the funds we had into the paving, the drainage, the infrastructure. This is a little above that.
So, Bill, is this a requirement now of the planning board in any new development?
I'm sorry, I missed that the first time. Yes, it is a requirement, and yes, we carry surety for that now.
As my wife will attest, I am not a clean person by nature. So I'm really having to focus on that. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, would anyone like to speak on the article? Also seeing none, is there any dissent to passing Article 17 unanimously? Seeing none, Article 17 passes unanimously. Okay, Article 18. Mr. Hughes, actually, I'll accept the motion from the floor for Article 18 as printed in the warrant. Motion's been made, and there is a second. Any questions on this article? Seeing none, would anyone like to speak on the article? Also seeing none, is there any dissent to passing Article 18 unanimously? Seeing none, Article 18 passes unanimously. Seriously, you guys hear that rooster, right? Like, all right, I will accept a motion from the floor for Article 19 as printed in the warrant. Motion been made. Is there a second? Motion been made and second. Is there any questions on Article 19? Seeing none, would anyone like to speak on Article 19? Also seeing none, is there any dissent to passing Article 19 unanimously? Seeing none, Article 19 passes unanimously. Article 20, Mr. Morse. just do that?
Actually looking to propose,
Just move to pass
I
over.
move to pass over Article 20.
Motion to pass over Article 20 has been made and seconded. Are there any questions about passing over Article 20? Seeing none, anyone like to speak on passing over Article 20? Seeing none, is there any dissent to passing over Article 20? Really? That's music to your ears? Seriously? Article 20 is passed over. Yes, I'm talking about the rooster. Article 21. Mr. Bowden. Okay. It's not even like 6 a.m. now. Like the rooster's broken.
He is broken. We arranged this.
How do you train a rooster? All right, go ahead. I give you a flyover, you give me a rooster. Nice.
There it is. I move that the town vote and approve payment in lieu of personal property tax or a pilot agreement between the town and BWC Witten Reservoir LLC as on file in the office of the town clerk in accordance with Chapter 59, Section 38H of the General Laws of Massachusetts as amended, Acts of 1997, Chapter 164, 71B as amended, and the Massachusetts Department of Revenue regulations adopted in connection therewith or any other law applicable thereto. That sounds like a petition.
Okay, motion's been made. Is there a second? Okay, motion's been made and seconded. You have the floor. Where the track is.
Yeah, well, thank you. Approval of this motion will allow payment in lieu of property tax or a pilot agreement between the town and BWC Witten Reservoir to take effect. Solar developers are exempt from taxation as a matter of state law. Many, including BWC Witten Reservoir, are willing to make payments to municipalities in lieu of taxes in order to lock in their financial exposure for the life of their project. Over a 20-year period, the payments that will be made under this pilot agreement will total nearly the same amount that would be made under traditional taxation of commercial property, which takes into consideration accelerated asset depreciation, tax law benefits for renewable energy projects. Solar farm pilot revenues help lighten the burden on the residential taxpayer.
Any questions?
Bob Maniz, 243 Northwest Main. I bought Whiten's Reservoir, so one of my questions is, does this mean there's a solar farm going in there? And what is BWC?
Bill Cundiff, town engineer. This is associated with a solar farm that's proposed on Oak Street. It's just the name of the company is White, BWC White.
Other questions?
Lisa Mozinski, 60 Oak Street. Before the townspeople enter into this pilot agreement, this property is under Chapter 61, which means that it is open space and agriculture. And as we've seen on the Open Space Committee in the past, if this property is offered, property will be leased by this company, but in fact this is a change of use for this agricultural property. So could we have clarification on the status of this property in regards to being offered to the town
before this agreement is entered into? Thank you.
Hi, Beth McKay, Principal Assessor. The property is in Chapter 61A. Part of it is in the Forest Management Plan. Part of it is in 4 fields. They are in the process of taking the land out of the chapter land before they put the solar farm in.
Mark Munjum, 20 Depot Street. There are several other solar panel farms in town or being proposed, and I was wondering if there are pilot programs for those ones.
Matt Wojcik, Town Administrator. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm going to look over towards Beth McKay because I want to get hand signals. Yes, the town does pilot agreements with solar farms. So I believe the one that has already been approved by town meeting is off of West Street that is being built now. What I'm not certain about, what about Wallem Lake Road? So that project is still has been proposed and has not yet reached town meeting. But there's been a conversation with the project proponent about a pilot agreement. So this would be your second in town. The solar field on Northeast Main at Mrs. Bosma's farm, I believe may have predated the tax exemption. So it was built and is being taxed under the old method. So these kinds of things are exempt now. They weren't before, so they're being taxed under the old method. The per megawatt charge in a pilot agreement is established to more or less mimic what you would have received if you were taxing it straight up as personal property. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
Other questions? Okay, seeing none. Anyone like to speak on the article? All right, also seeing none. What? Oh, I apologize. I need a manicure.
Lisa Mosinski, 60 Oak Street again. I feel that approving this agreement is putting the cart before the horse. If the owner is removing the property from Chapter 61, the property needs to go before the townspeople to decide, or the Board of Selectmen to decide whether or not the town should exercise its right of first refusal to purchase the property itself. This pilot is on the personal property, the commercial development, and this would come after there's actually access to the property. So I urge you all to defeat this motion.
Would anyone else like to speak on the article? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of Article 21, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying no. What's that? The ayes clearly have it, unless anybody disagrees and would like to challenge. Okay, there's a challenge. All those in favor, please stand. You may be seated. All those opposed, please stand. You may be seated. This article requires a simple majority, and the article passes 46 to 18. I will accept a motion to pass over Article 22. Motion been made. Is there a second? Is there any dissent to passing over Article 22? Seeing none, Article 22 is passed over. So again, I would like to thank Christopher Hubbard and his company, Emergency Productions, as well as members of the school and other town employees for making this happen today. I'd also like to thank all of you. I know these were very different circumstances, and to my knowledge, the first outdoor town meeting that I'm aware of anyway in our recorded history. So thank you all for working with us on the protocols and try to make this meeting as safe as possible. These are the board and committee openings that we have. They're pretty extensive. I would encourage everyone, if you would like to get involved with your town, to look over some of the opportunities to get involved. And you can always reach out to me or just call the selectman's office, and they can give you a list of current openings and look at your skills and say, well, you know what, look, I can I can help the town in this way. These are the skills that I possess, or I have this much time. Maybe it's not a full position, maybe it's just volunteering, but one of the things that I think a lot of us have noticed as the COVIDs have taken over is that we're all spending a lot more time in our own community, and that community requires volunteers in order to progress and to be the town that we all hope that it can be. So again, I want to thank all of those who are currently volunteering, all of those who are currently involved, and I want to encourage those of you who might be considering it to reach out. And with that, I will accept a motion to adjourn. Motion's been made. Is there a second? Motion made and seconded. Is there any dissent to dissolving this meeting? Seeing none, have a great rest of your weekend. Thank you very much.